Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Magpie Circle podcast. I'm tempted to say journalistic royalty and an old mucker of mine for the England media team from many from many moons ago. Sorry about the echo there. We all know Henry Winter. He's got over 1 million Twitter followers, which I think puts him marginally ahead of Wrexham now when it comes to their global domination in North America. Henry, very warm welcome to you.
Very warm welcome also to you, because all I've done for the last 20 years is done your running in midfield for the press team.
You didn't help me out much when I was trying to mark Robert Pires in the Ukraine, did you?
I didn't. I'll tell you what he was doing. And then one of our players tried to nutmeg him. And I thought, you don't do that to world champions. And he certainly inflicted a bit of damage back on you. But no, Macy, very good to be invited on. We've had some runs all over. Well, I mean, jogs, runs, probably slightly optimistic. Brisk strolls is our running style all over the place.
We got lost in Slovenia, didn't we? Do you remember that one?
We got very lost in Slovenia. I think we almost ended up in Slovakia. We were that lost.
Anyway, before we turn off, we've got loads of people on the line. I have to say at the minute, we've invited you on because you paid a visit down to Meadow Lane and had a good catch up with Luke, our head coach, and also Macaulay Langstaff. Not a great weekend for us, I have to say, which is putting it rather mildly. Colville Town knocked us out of the FA Cup. Never mind. Talk to us a little bit, Henry, because you obviously quite literally globetrot around the world. But you're still in the Midlands and you like to get around to all your football. So a rare visit to Meadow Lane, and you've seen, well, I don't know whether you've interviewed Erling Haaland yet, but you've interviewed Macaulay Langstaff. What did you think of Mr. Langstaff?
I mean, it was a Zoom because I was abroad, but honestly, he could not have been more fun. You know, you interview people and you come out of an interview and you think, what a good guy. I really hope he does well. So obviously I was following the development against Colville, but just one of those guys who just on a serious level is a reminder of the importance of the pyramid, the importance of, also your manager, Luke Williams, just in terms of their development, particularly with Macca, as Luke insisted on calling him. You know, it's so important there. And I can remember Jamie Vardy, his first day training with England, and then his press conference afterwards, and the journey that he'd made from long non-league, Fleetwood, Leicester, then in the Championship, as you well know, and then stepping up, winning the title, winning the FA Cup, England glory, and all that. And that it's so important that we never forget that. We never forget the pathway. Whatever industry you're in, whether it's your industry, my industry, they're baby steps. There's a pathway. There's a ladder. And so just talking to Langstaff about his journey, about getting 50 quid a week when he was playing for Billingen Symphonia. So the whole point, I mean, to be fair to Notts, they did it brilliantly. The PR guy contacted me. Media. Yeah, he's really good. And fair play to him. And tell you what, a few Premier League clubs could take a lesson from what he did. He contacted me he sent me a DM, social media, and I replied, and he said, we're doing these series of interviews because, you know, it's good publicity for the National League, back-to-back player of the month. He's obviously keeping pace with Erling Haaland. He had this sort of awareness that it was a good news story from us, media perspective, digital print, whatever we are nowadays. And so he asked James Nursey and myself, James from the Mirror, and we did a Zoom with Luke and Macaulay as well. And just first, what a delightful character. It's just great to see someone like that, the enthusiasm, this love, but also this journey that he's been on. Doesn't come from a football background. I mean, what are we today? I haven't got a clue. It was a Monday today. I was at Anfield yesterday, and walking up to the press room, I bumped into Alfie Haaland, who was doing some stuff for Norwegian television. I just said, hi, good luck, whatever. And you think of the journey that he helped Erling on, and Macaulay has done that without having, you know, he's obviously had family who've driven him all over the place, but they've not had Alfie's, experience. This is the pathway, Erling. This is what you need to go on. This is what you need to eat. Don't drink that, whatever. So I really warmed to him. It was on a Zoom. What do we want? 15, 20 minutes. But what a likable character. And I will follow his career. And I hope he obviously goes up with you guys. But I just think he's obviously got something about him. I don't think he came on Saturday, did he, in the cup?
He did, but didn't score, which is very rare.
Oh, right. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah, I only notice him when he scores, which is, to be fair, is most of the games. And I just think it's a lovely story, and fair play for Notts for getting the word out there.
It's also a little bit of a throwback in the sense, Henry, that you would deal the very, very top end. And when you're talking with a lot of the Premier League and England players coming through, they've been coming through academies now since quite literally the age of 5, 6, 7, and don't necessarily have the time because of the games and the commitments that they have to support their local football club, to travel, to be a season ticket holder, to go away with them or whatever. And as we would both know from talking with Macaulay, he's a borough boy through and through. Used to go to all the games, was a ball boy there. Do you think that helps in some ways the development from a grassroots perspective to understand and empathise with supporters and what they go through?
I mean, people are stirred and spurred in different ways. I would imagine that pathway that he was on, looking at maybe what his friends were doing, maybe they didn't have a sort of a professional pathway, jobs, whatever, unemployment, particularly in the Northeast. We all know how badly that's been hit. Maybe that's drove him on. But I also know a lot of, you take sort of Hugo Lloris, who at Tottenham Hotspur, who comes from a very wealthy background in, I think it was Monaco. And, he was a schoolboy French tennis star. He had everything going for him, but he had this drive. So I slightly juggle about how people are driven. But absolutely, he totally had that drive, just as Erling Haaland had that drive. And this was an interesting conversation because he said, look, everyone's saying I'm the non-league Haaland or that. He's on WhatsApps and he's getting all these lovely messages by saying, oh, Haaland's one ahead of you. You'll catch him up. Haaland won't be playing for 4 weeks when the World Cup's on, although Norway obviously didn't qualify, but he obviously won't be playing because he's Premier League. And you might be able to sort of get ahead of him. And, Notts County having I know you love your music and, Notts County having a Christmas #1 and all that. And that is great. But you actually look at them and they're both equally driven. You look at the sacrifices that Macaulay has made. When his mates were going out on Teesside in Middlesbrough, he was staying at home. That is huge. So, yeah, look, individuals are motivated in different ways, but yeah, he's a real character, and I just hope. Look, he's 25 now.
Yes,
and I just hope he makes. Well, I hope he makes that jump with you, because as a not historian, but someone who's obsessed with the history of the game like me, you're the oldest professional club in the world. And I just hope to see Notts rising up. I'll tell you a story. What I'm like. I'm driving all over the country late at night, coming back from matches because I hate hotels. And I always want to get home to where we live in Leicestershire, Rutland. And, they always sort of, whatever it is, the sort of transport people, they lay cones out for you late at night. So 2 o'clock in the morning, you're stuck on the M1. You've done it. People, I'm not sort of, it's a very small sort of violin I'm playing here, because obviously the sort of fans, Notts fans traveling all over the country have to do this, and I'm fortunate to get paid for it. But one day I was stuck on the M1 and I did a wiggle through. I was trying to get onto the A52, the Grantham Road, so I went through Nottingham, and I realised I was going past Meadow Lane. And I had your image sort of, rose up in front of me, and I thought, well, that's not a nice image. And so I actually, it's about 1:30 in the morning. I was coming back from a match in the Northwest somewhere, and I just pulled up outside the ground and took a picture of the gates, and then I posted it on Twitter, because kind of that's the modern world we're in. And the reaction was just another reminder of how huge you are as a club. I mean, this was something Macaulay was saying. He said, listen, we got almost 11,000 for the Wrexham game. Okay, Wrexham bought 2,000, but you still had, was it 10,721 in there? That's the fifth tier of English football. This is bonkers. When I talked to, I mean, I was fortunate as a kid to go to school overseas and watch games over there. They wouldn't be getting that in their top division. So huge respect for Notts. And even just a picture of your gates at 1:45 in the morning just gets a reaction. So no, it was great, and fair play to the club. And you know what? Having seen what clubs have gone through with COVID and what you particularly went through, and Sven, I know Sven, I know Sol, I know Casper, and the journeys that they've been on, and particularly the detours they made through Notts County and the difficulties that you went through then. To see Notts County, who for me are one of the founding clubs, I think you're older than the Football Association. So, that's huge. Just to see you sort of reviving again, it's a great story professionally, but also I think it kind of warms the heart personally as well.
Thank you for those kind words. Colin Scott. So Macca plays up front with a guy called Kedwin Scott, who's a fellow Geordie from Hexham. Kedwin is a decent player. His dad is a regular listener, always comes on as a chat with me. He just posted on our message board saying, I was at Blythe to see Blythe Spartans rattle Wrexham, who were very poor all afternoon. If Wrexham lost 1-0, they couldn't complain. You are a huge advocate of the football pyramid, a huge advocate. And I kind of want to get your thoughts and views. We had quite a big debate with Mark Ives, the General Secretary of the National League, who kindly came on the show, like your good self. And I asked him about what is the feasibility of expanding an extra promotion place, because there's a big debate at the minute. Only one goes up automatically from the National League, one through a convoluted playoff system. And clearly we as Notts County now are quite up for adding an extra place. If we were still in the Football League, I'm not so sure we would be too interested in debate. There is quite a clamour for it. What's your take on that? And do you think Football League clubs would ever, inverted commas, be turkeys voting for Christmas?
I would be amazed, particularly post-COVID, in terms of their financial situation. In terms of the quality that's in the National League, I mean, just talking to Luke, he was saying that you played and beat a team in Wrexham, who he described as they could easily play in League One. Obviously, you've got the financial resources, but he just said those 11 players on the pitch that you beat with a goal from your man, they could do that. So in terms of quality, I don't think it's an issue at all. I just cannot see the EFL, those clubs, just basically effectively slitting their throats at a time when they're struggling financially.
Is it good or bad for the game that we are now seeing Scunthorpe, Oldham, Notts County, all in recent years, quite established Football League clubs dropping into the National League, significant support of fan bases? What's your take on that?
I mean, this is a debate we have with American owners, with elite clubs, who are very much against the pyramid, the concept of the pyramid, and I'm very much in favour of. We'll take Leicester, my local club you know well, coming up through the divisions, and doing what they did. Other clubs have done that as well. It was interesting hearing Eddie Howe talking about, can Newcastle take that step on? Obviously, it's at a different level, but he was making the point about Bournemouth, who were League Two, League One, Championship. I love that. I love that idea. That's what life should be about. It should be about progression. It should be about hard work. It should be about climbing the ladder in your career and my career. So absolutely, I like that. But you made a point earlier about what Macca had done in terms of not coming up through the normal academy route. But actually, I'll be heading off to Qatar for my sins, and there'll be 26 England players will be climbing on that plane. And probably 22, 23 of them will have some debt to the EFL, maybe one or two of them, particularly if, maybe one or two of the, certain players might have actually have needed to have actually gone through non-league. to play there, and they will all have had grassroots clubs before going into academy at 6, 7, 8, or whatever. So I just think that we have. This is an argument I always have with the Premier League and with the owners when they're prepared to talk. Is you have to understand the pyramid is driving developing players. So say like so McCoy and stuff came from you mentioned Blythe Spartans, Belgium. So Fournier, he had a little time at York. Obviously Gateshead, where he admitted in past interviews that they'd worked on his mentality. They developed him, now you're developing him, and he may then go up through the ranks. This is absolutely vital. All players, and it's not simply players, it's also coaches. Luke Williams, you look at the quality of, look at a Graham Potter, you look at the development that he's done. I went and did the media training at QPR just to sort of help them out because I like them as a club. And Mick Beale was there. You look at the journey that he's been obviously more, working as a sort of number 2. But again, that pathway is absolutely key. I would hate it if my job was just purely a sinecure and there was no one, and you know what football journalism is like now, there are courses all over the country. There are thousands of fantastic young kids flooding into our industry, wanting to sort of take your job, which is the way it should be in any industry. And that's absolutely the way it should be in football. So coming back to your point in a long-winded, as I often am, way, that pathway has to be there.
One thought, if not expanding promotion places, we used to have, before you and I were born, a regionalised Division 3, 4, it then was, North and South. Do you see any merit? Let me get the question out before you say no. Do you see any merit in adding a section of the National League top tier into the League 2 as it now stands and making a North and South?
I mean, the very phrase National League, it does what it says on the tin. It's not a regional league. It shouldn't be. Look, I know there are issues with climate change. I know there are issues in terms of the sort of logistics of traveling around the country, and the fans are just your fans. Wrexham fans with 2,000 turn up. It's not a short schlep from Wrexham to Notts. So I slightly see it from that perspective of regional, but no, I like the national element to it. I think it's fair enough. So lower down. I mean, my local club is Stanford, and they're slightly more local. But no, I think that you should be competing against the best all over the place, because that's, again, coming back to this pyramid thing, is just so important. Look, I'm sure there are economic reasons, and finer minds than mine who are running the National League might actually at some point say we need regional. But I just don't like seeing it. Also, it's like when Todd Bowley at Chelsea came out the other day. I'm sure you saw it, and he said, "Let's have an all-star game, North and South." And I'm going, well, hang on a sec. I live in the Midlands. As a journalist, am I North or South? How do you define? Tyrone Mings, if he's going to be in there, another one who's come up at that non-league journey as well. Is he North or South? Who defines? I mean, if you're talking to people in London, they probably think the North begins at Watford. But you know what? You need to actually work out exactly where it is. So, I mean, good luck bringing a regional league, because you'd have everyone throwing maps and compasses at you.
Football economics. We've obviously I'm not quite sure how they work, other than you never make a profit. So look, I do work with Major League Soccer. You've been out some trips with me out there, and for a capitalist society, the way that America runs its sports leagues is actually very democratic. Salary caps, draft picks, and it's all designed to give the team that finishes bottom of the NFL or the NBA or whatever a fantastic chance to level up. That's kind of predicated on no relegation. It's a closed shop, so therefore business models are so much better. And I think we all agree, although Premiership Rugby are having a good go at it, aren't they? we all agree you have to keep a promotion and relegation structure in I think all soccer outside of MLS in the US.
All soccer.
Well, yeah, well, it depends who I'm talking to, you see, so I'll have to get the correct phraseology. But salary caps is a way in which certainly the English leagues are trying to bring some semblance of financial discipline. You obviously speak to a lot of owners and understand a lot of these things and speak to leagues. The National League last year put in a working party to look at capping a salary cap for National League, and the figure was 900,000, which is clearly ludicrous given already what Wrexham are spending, we're spending, Chesterfield are spending, Scunthorpe when they drop down are spending, Oldham are spending, and so on and so on. When we asked Mark Ives about it, he said, well, it will be, inverted commas, a soft salary cap. What's your take on the whole discussion about salary caps? Would you like to see more of them, or do you just think they're a waste of time?
No, I think any industry that you're in, it should be performance related. If I'm not good at my job, I would expect my salary or any potential bonus, whatever, to decrease. I think any walk of life that you're in, that absolutely there should be that. So, excuse me, that is a version of a soft salary cap. But you mentioned Wrexham. I've really enjoyed the Wrexham series, the documentary series, which I think is just come to an end. But actually, what that showed was that you can invest money, and look, they've invested money in infrastructure, in good people, in facilities around the club, and obviously in wages, with specifically one or two players around there. But it doesn't guarantee success. So, I think the manager is the key individual. If you've got a good manager, which you have, that is absolutely huge. So, but coming back to your point, it has to be performance related. So what I would like to see, and this is not simply in the National League, this is EFL, this is Premier League, that you have, and this is a particularly sensitive issue post-COVID, with all the sort of financial issues that clubs, even at the elite end, have been through, is that you have a sensible, I don't know what a sensible wage is in the Premier League, but say, this is a ridiculous figure to say, but say it's like 100 grand. And then you have bonuses, which could take you to 200, 300 grand if you deliver, whether it's assists, whether it's clean sheets, whether it's goals. I know they're trying to do that more and more, but I just think that's a general philosophy, culture that should spread throughout the game.
A lot of people point fingers at Wrexham, Hollywood Wrexham, all of that. You have no problems with a team spending, to some people, a disproportionate amount of, I use the phrase investment very loosely, a disproportionate amount. You think that's fine?
Well, from what I can see of Wrexham, they've been investing it in the stadium, which need a lot of TLC. They've been investing it in community. They've been investing it in, just sort of infrastructure, stadium, and things like that. You would hope there is an element of FFP that makes sure they can't just throw money at everything, at players, at salaries, and then it just becomes totally over the top. But you have to invite and encourage wealth into the industry, particularly with clubs like this at the moment. And you know what? I've never met the two Hollywood actors, but we've exchanged messages. And actually, from what I can see and talking to people around the club, they actually seem fairly genuine. They also made the point in one of the first episodes that if they screw up, everyone knows where they are. They can't hide on social media. There will be people coming for them. And I just think that, I don't have a problem with Wrexham, because actually I think what they are doing is highlighting the whole division. And just talking to you, talking to your manager, Luke, he was saying, actually, it just gives even more of a buzz around the place. Plus, also, I would imagine that wherever Notts County go, everyone wants to beat you, just as everyone wants to beat Wrexham because of your history.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether you've had a chance yet, or has a suitable moment come for you to shine a light on Dorking Wanderers. Dorking is a quite incredible story. It literally was Jumpers for Goalposts Sunday League team 20 odd years ago, and it's the same guy whose name eludes me now, and he is owner, chairman, and match day manager. He employs a full time coach during the week, and he's kind of the old school, Cloughie Warnock walks in on a match day and is in the dugout. And before every game, he gives £300, puts it at a local pub, and that is for the away fans to have a drink on him. Now, clearly with Notts, the 300 quid lasted. The pub opened at 11 o'clock, and it was ended by 11:10. When 300 quid,
that was with you.
No, I got it there at 11:08. It was gone. But he's a real character, and I think one thing you do get in the National League are these huge disparities between Wrexham and then Dorking, with honestly the worst 3G pitch in the world, not 4G, 3G. And to be fair to the owner, he says it's a disgrace, and it is. But what a great storyline that is.
It's a great storylines are absolutely key, and obviously from our side of the fence, we look at it from a media perspective. But we've got 4 weeks coming up in which my local club, Stamford, Notts, should really be going out there and banging the drum. And from what I can work out from Notts, they will do, because they're pretty switched on in terms of community, in terms like little things. I was just sort of talking to some. In fact, it was a Colville fan who said, "Well, Notts are going to struggle at the weekend. We'll do that. We're in good form." And I said, "Well, good luck." And by the way, I heard the tickets are under sevens free, top whack 10 quid. And then the club, Notts, retweeted or liked it. So they're very switched on like that. And you're heading into this 4-week period where Nottingham Forest are not going to be playing. And you know what it's like? You've got a lot of. Maybe it's a post-COVID thing, but I'm seeing it a lot of grounds that I go to, a lot of kids there, where they're hanging around outside the ground because they want to see the stars. And stars don't just have to be, I don't know, Marcus Rashford or Cristiano Ronaldo. It can be fifth tier. It can be someone who is just because of the allure that, the sort of lustre that footballers have, because we all admire them. There is that complete fascination. So this is an opportunity for Notts to grab. Look, you know the city far better than I do, but whenever I go there and I park up at Trent Bridge, and I've done the Nottingham Half Marathon, which starts in that lovely park over the other side of the Trent. Obviously, you've got Notts there, you've got Forest as well. You are a remarkable sporting city, but there is this great opportunity during the World Cup to get even more people to come. So you will get these huge, you've got great gates already, but you'll get even more. So I would hope, just coming back in a vague way to your point, the World Cup period is used by clubs outside the elite to promote their own.
I'm absolutely certain there will be. And in reply to Chris Gossett, because we get loads of comments coming out, and we're just chatting for the opening half an hour. Don't worry, guys, I'll be reading all your comments out very shortly. Notts County. As you can see, all these shirts for when we were in the top division of English football. Now, you are, I think, virtually identical age to me, 59. What memories have you got of Notts' fledgling journalistic career? Let's take just for a moment a little trip down memory or meadow lane. For instance, believe it or not, it's only about 11 years ago. Notts County, Manchester City. And they didn't beat us. 1-1. Edwin Dzeko got his first goal.
1-1. In fact, I just sort of checked on that just to sort of remind me. And they said it was so long ago. They said the replay was going to be at Eastlands. And you think of how many, the name changes has had since then. Well, you look at, I think Dzeko scored. Michael Richards, who's now obviously on the television, he had actually quite a decent game. But you look, they had Zabaleta on the bench. They had Kolo Toure on the bench. I think Yaya started. It was a pretty decent team. So Yeah, I'm pretty sure I went to that game because it was for some reason. But yeah, no, it was. But that shows what can happen if you get a benefactor. You know, you can talk about Manchester City and their issues, but you're an older club than Manchester City. Your roots go back further than theirs. So that comes back to me what the game is all about. It's about dreams. It's about opportunities. It's about pathways. It's snakes and ladders. Sometimes you go up a ladder, and occasionally you slip that down a snake. But there is that. But yeah, no, sorry, I do absolutely do remember that. Obviously, I remember your book, which will probably be a 10-part film by the time they've
Very much.
they've got through. Well, I remember talking to you when you started your book. It's about 125,000 words, and that was just the foreword. I mean, but again, I was talking to you, and that's a sort of reflection on the history of the club, the size of the club. I know Dave McVeigh and the sort of the, his extraordinary time with your club, and I think he wrote 2 books on you in the end.
He did.
Stake Diana Ross,
Stake Diana Ross 1 and 2.
1 and 2. There you go, 2 stakes. So yeah, again, it's just huge history.
Have you? I mean, you've interviewed everyone. I'm guessing you would have interviewed both. I mean, 2 of our most illustrious names. One clearly Neil Warnock, and 2. I don't know whether you would have ever spoken to Jimmy Cyril, but the man really that got Notts into the top flight, cutting his teeth when really no one knew who he was, with Howard Wilkinson. And I'm guessing you would have spent time with both Howard and Neil.
Yeah, I mean, Howard, I can remember going. I mean, this is slightly more recently than when he was at you, but I remember going over to his house on the edge of Leeds. Sheffield.
Worlow.
Yeah, that's right. And I sort of drove up his drive, and he was there just sort of waving his fist. I don't know if I can tell this story, but I will anyway. He was waving his fist in the air, and I said, "What's up?" And he said, I think it was herons, would dive from the fish.
They nicked his koi carp, didn't they?
He had koi carp, and he actually then decided to put this net. I think at the time he was putting this netting over the top of his koi carp pond, so these herons were coming down like bouncing bombs, were just sort of bouncing off them. I mean, amazing man. Obviously, the title in '92 with Leeds. I mean, he's a remarkable individual. I don't think he's properly appreciated in terms of what he's done for football in this country, for the development of the game in this country, for his work at St George's Park, or actually pushing St George's Park on. It's now the 10th anniversary of St George's. No, remarkable man. I will say that I'm not sure you were at the FA at the time, but it's when Umbro was sponsoring the England team. This was about 20 odd years ago. And they gave all the sort of football correspondents these long sort of trench coats, quilted trench coats for the cold, with Umbro on it and with our initials on it. So Henry Windsales HW. And I didn't really think I'm ever going to wear this, but I wore it to one game once. And it was a game in Yorkshire. And I was just walking into the game. The amount of abuse I got. And I was going, what's this about? And it's because they had HW on it. So I think I maybe had a hat on or whatever. But it was kind of like banter. Can't remember which club it was. But anyway, but you know what? Remarkable man. And look, Neil is, I mean, maybe get a couple of referees on to talk about Neil. But I love people who have a passion for the game, like Neil, who even in retirement, he is still probably mowing his lawn, and he's got it at 4-4-2, and he's got his sort of garden gnomes in a sort of 4-4-2 formation or whatever. And he will be passionate about football till the day he dies. And he'll probably still be being linked with clubs all around the country, in his 90s. Long may he live. So look, people like Howard, people like Neil, people like Jimmy. I think, did he do the foreword to your book? Was that right?
It was Sven, actually. Jimmy. It was Jimmy had sadly passed on by the time I started writing the book. Yeah.
I mean, well, dear old Sven. I mean, I went up, dear old Sven. How many stories do you want on Sven? So I went out to see him in Sweden, his house in Sweden, And I mentioned obviously Notts, and I think he enjoyed his time there. It wasn't that long. It wasn't particularly glorious, but Sven kind of enjoys life. Yeah, he's well, I can tell you some stories about Sven. So yeah, but people who have a passion. One thing I'll say about Sven, he was very much aware, as a lot of Swedes are, of English football history, English
Yes.
history, and he was very well. You would have known him cross paths with him at Leicester, but also I think at Notts he was very aware of the significance of the club.
Yeah, the players all said that he attended every training session, and one of the things he did and told me was that wherever he went, he would always move straight into that city or that town.
Yeah, he
And
did. Yeah,
Manchester, Leicester,
yeah.
Nottingham from day one. Todd was kind of very much his lieutenant, would drive him, and all the Notts players, Ian Bishop, those that would say Sven was there every single training session, every single day.
And one of the many reasons I love Sven is that he puts football into perspective. So when he got sacked by Manchester City, I think he was on a trip somewhere, and Didi Hamann was lying by the pool, and Sven walked over. It was like 10 in the morning, and Sven walked over, and there was a waiter, as ever, close to Sven, who had a tray, 2 glasses, very nice bottle of vintage champagne. 10 o'clock in the morning, Didi Hamann was expecting sort of yogurt and maybe a croissant or whatever. And so the waiter opened this bottle of champagne, and Didi said, what are we, Sven, what are we celebrating? You just lost your job. And he said, Kaiser. He always called any German player Kaiser. And he said, Kaiser, we are celebrating life. And you know what? Okay, so he's got a sort of cushion because he's relatively well off and whatever. He's had a great career, but actually, that's quite a good approach to life. Celebrate life.
Yeah, it was. I remember with the short time he was here, we played away at Grimsby. Grimsby can be bleak, in August, let alone December.
Good fish and chips.
And I was in the director's box with him, and it's a working class community and it's a working class town. And so Sven comes out into the director's box, which wasn't really a box. It was just 2 rows of seats that was hardly partitioned from the rest of the main stand. So Sven comes out in his immaculate suit. And I think it was a Venezuelan lady that was with him at the time, decked out to the nines, the stilettos, everything, $1 million. Everywhere else you're looking at a sea of people in trawlerman's jumpers, and they all see Sven, they all see the lady, and they all become like semi-polite, and then they all queue up for Sven in the director's box, separated by one piece of, wood, all asking for the selfies, all for the autographs. And do you know what? He did every single one. Every single one.
Oh, he's brilliant. I think he's still with the Venezuelan.
She's
Yeah.
lasted a while then, that one, to be fair.
Yeah. She's due a testimonial. Yeah, no, she's no, that's but that is Sven for you. He is very he was no, he's a really good guy. He's quite soulful in a way.
Yeah.
And he looks back on what happened with England, and he looks at the sort of the players that he had, the sort of Gerrard and Lampard and Scholes and all these fantastic midfielders, fantastic defenders, good strikers, Michael Owen. And do you know what? Even now, he said, it's the proudest moment of my life managing England. He said, you have to understand, for a Swede who grew up admiring England as the homeland of football, which is why he understood the importance of Notts County, because he understood the game, the history. I gave him loads of stick at the time, 3 tournaments worth of stick, but actually he genuinely cared about it, which I don't think Capello particularly cared about it, but I think Sven definitely did.
I quite like Fabio, to be fair. I quite like Fabio.
He was good, but Fabio was hilarious because he didn't quite understand when he said, we've got this fantastic training ground in South Africa, we've got these big fences around it, all the pitches are on site, the players won't be able to go over anywhere, they're right out in the middle of nowhere, and they'll just be able to focus on football. And we had this press conference with him and said, this is not like dealing with Baresi and Maldini, who are quite happy to sit there and play chess for 4 hours and talk about Verdi and opera and things like that. You know, you've got John Terry and Steven Gerrard, who are hardcore football characters, but who will get bored quite easily. And if you're sticking them in the middle of nowhere, I mean, that was an absolute chaotic trip. I mean, Michael Carrick tells a story about being, at training and basically being completely ignored. Joe Hart, who'd had a really good season at Birmingham City, should really have been England's number one. Capello called him John for the whole tournament as well. So, look, I mean, it was a crazy trip. I don't think the media, my side particularly, covered ourselves in glory. I can remember talking to Joe Cole after the players on the Capello. Capello said, right, we need to get out of this. I've realised that England players can't cope with being locked up. We're now going on a safari. So all the players went out on a safari. And I talked to Joe Cole the next day and said, how was it, mate? Because we're both from Camden Town in the middle of London. I said, how was it, mate? And he said, I saw more photographers than lions.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of on the media, which is always an issue. But look, I love Fabio. Fabio was great fun. And if you wanted to know the best restaurants to go to, Fabio was your man. But I think there were issues with the players. But the players love Sven, because he loves life.
Robert Holland says, great episode tonight. Need to drop off soon to pick my daughter up, but looking forward to seeing the rest later. I could listen to Henry's football anecdotes all night. Chris Gosling, one of our regulars, has informed us, just to rub a little bit of salt into our FA Cup wound, Colville have drawn Charlton away. What a great tie for Colville.
Well, I tell you what, there's a thing, because when I was talking to your mate, Macca, he was saying that Gateshead got Charlton in the FA Cup last year, and it was live on ITV. And he said that's
Friday night, wasn't it? Yes. Yeah.
But you know what? This comes back to this whole thing, whether it's the pyramid, whether it's the FA Cup. I mean, I will fight for the FA Cup, partly for financial reasons because it's so important for clubs. But we all grew up loving the FA Cup, whether it was, as you say, we're both 59, whether it was that Saturday when you had started so early in the morning, you had like It's a Knockout, you had Meet the Players' Wives, you had all that sort of drama. The FA Cup matters because the FA Cup, in a way, it's an even bigger expansion of the concept of the pyramid. Just so important. Like when my club, locally to here, it even has a sniff of a qualifying round of the FA Cup, the whole town goes crazy.
Well, 1,400 came from Colville. Average home crowd's about 150. So literally, Colville must have emptied. And I know I need to let you go because it's very rare that you are at home, normally on the M1 with the cones. Give me your thoughts on squad rotation, resting players, because, and I'm tying this back to Notts against Colville,
which you did
made 8 or 9 changes. We kept some of the big guns on the bench and brought them on for the last 20 minutes without any success, obviously. But what started out as elite level, rotating squads, kind of permeated down to Championship, kind of almost permeating down to bigger League One clubs when they played League Cups, FA Cups. And so clearly as us as a National League team playing a Tier 17, again, and we're not dissimilar to many other the larger clubs in the National League, rested quite a few players. What's your take on that? Are the demands, do you think, placed on players so much more physical prowess required that they need these breaks? Do you think we've gone too far? Do you think it's the right thing to do?
If you get up, it's definitely the right thing to do. I mean, look, I love the cup, and I want to see it properly respected. I mean, at the elite level, if you are saying, say, Foden's not going to start for this City, Foden's not going to start, but Jack Grealish is going to come in. So you're taking out a homegrown player, but you're bringing in a £100 million player. Is that necessarily weakening it? Personally, I think Foden starts for City, for England, ahead of Grealish. but you're not weakening it that much. If you're then saying, "Oh, we're going to bring Mahrez or whoever in," I completely, I understand that. I don't have a problem with what Luke did at the weekend. But also you've got big squads there. You've got competitive individuals. You can't keep playing the same players week in, week out. A, they'll get knackered, and B, what the others going to do? Who are rattling around on the outside. Again, there's a balance whether you change 6 or 7 or whatever. I mean, forgive me. Are you still 3 substitutes or 5?
It's a very good point. We are 5 subs, but can only use 3. And there was a big debate about, yeah, exactly. There was a big debate that the National League should, giving aspirational promotion to the Football League, should mirror that. But there was a vote and there was a consensus among the smaller clubs. Yeah, because there's a huge divide, National League, and the smaller clubs don't want to give any more of an advantage to Wrexham, Notts County, Chesterfield. So you're in the unusual position where the smaller clubs kind of dictated the policy to the bigger clubs. So that is an issue.
You then get the flip side of that at the elite level is that Pep often doesn't use anywhere near his full quota of substitutes. So it's it can vary. I mean, I think 5 makes sense as long as they're brought in at set times, so you don't have 1-1-1-1-1 where people use it deliberately to break up the play. I also think, and I was very disappointed the Premier League didn't do this, is that at least 1 or 2 of the 5 substitutes should be homegrown.
Yeah. I'll let you go. One final question, because I know clearly you would be one of the most senior journalists and professional communicators on social media and Twitter. And we, like many other clubs, periodically have, shall we say, a debate, putting it politely. Players get abused, etc. We had one situation earlier this year with an experienced midfielder, Jim O'Brien, and he kind of bit back. We had issues last year with Kel Roberts, one of our big name players, who's now at Aberdeen. He had challenges with it. What's your take on the whole social media issue?
I quite like it when players bite back. I mean, obviously, it depends what's being thrown their way, but the abuse that players get. I mean, the day after the Euro 2020 final, 3 black players, Rashford, Sancho, and Saka, were racially abused on social media. And if there can be an encouraging element to that, was how the sport rallied around them. Individuals, clubs. So like Saka, first game of next season, the Brentford fans applauded him as he warmed up, applauded him when he came on, basically sent out a message that, enough is enough, kick it out. So social media companies have absolutely got to do more. But I don't have a problem with players hitting back on social media.
Ivan Toney at the weekend overnight from Brentford.
Ivan Toney, Friday night, scores twice. Fantastic. Wakes up in the morning. He says, "I've woken up angry because of the abuse." So why should any professional in any walk of life, anyone, you don't do that if you work onto a shop floor. You don't work, if you're working in an editorial office, whatever. It's just despicable. So actually, fair play to him that he called them out. It was on Instagram. Meta said, "Well, we need more complaints. We need, the social media companies are basically just messing about. If they wanted her to stop it more, they could do. They could absolutely clamp down on it, whether it's initially by saying you've got to give a phone, you've got to give an email, whatever, before you can actually have an account. There has to be some accountability that you can be tracked back. Then fair enough. Look, I'm a white guy, a journalist on social media. I get a little bit of abuse. I will never, ever, ever complain about it because I know Marcus Rashford, and he's privately sent me some of the abuse that he gets, and it is absolutely disgusting. And it is probably, people were sort of saying the abuse he got after the Europa League final when he missed that penalty, and then the issue with England and the abuse that he got there. The abuse, the DMs, but also the voice messages that he got, really personal. He's clicking on a voice message, absolute filth being directed at him, and no one should have that. And that is why the social media companies, us in the mainstream media, whatever, the Football Association, the clubs have absolutely got to clamp down on it. And that's why I was really pleased that Ivan Toney basically just said, enough is enough. I'm going to name and shame this character.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with every single word you've said there. The only people that stop this are those social media companies on the basis, unfortunately, an element of Joe Public will never be able to police themselves, will they? That's the problem.
It's important. I wrote a book with John Barnes 25 years ago, and I said, John, how are you going to change this? He was playing at Goodison Park or Anfield when there were so many Everton fans racially abusing him, and he was getting the famous photograph of him flicking a banana off the. But we should not, in the 21st century, be having this conversation. We should be celebrating Ivan Toney, Marcus Rashford, and just a very short thing, just on England. We were with Gareth Southgate the other day, and I asked him, I said, listen, England are heading into a World Cup, into a tournament. The chances are that you're going to get out of the group stage. You might have a penalty shootout at one point. Will you consider effectively whether you're prepared to choose a black player to take a penalty when you know that poor kid who's, I've never taken a penalty, but just, the prospect of walking from the halfway line is nerve-wracking enough on its own to take a penalty, all the history with England and all that, although they've done slightly better in recent penalty shootouts apart from Wembley. But to have on top of that awareness that if you miss that penalty, this racial storm is going to come at you. All these emojis are going to come at you. Now that inhibits England's chances of progressing in a tournament, of black players being able to. And that's why I was really pleased. Bukayo Saka has taken every penalty that he's had an opportunity to this season because he wants to show that he's got that courage. But it's a crazy situation that we're in. That black players, England's black players, are having to go through this additional torture and trauma when they step up to take a penalty, because it must be nerve-wracking enough it is. And my admiration of them as individuals, of footballers, just goes up even more, knowing what Marcus has gone through, what Jayden has gone through, what Bukayo has gone through. And the fact is, fair play to them, they will still volunteer, they'll still step up for it. But it's got to be clamped down, whether it's education in schools, whether it's parents being more responsible for kids, whether it's clubs, whether it's CCTV and sound, whether it's social media companies, which is where we came in. But something's got to be done about it, because I want to write about England winning a tournament, not black players being racially abused again.
Well said, Henry. Henry, we must let you go because we've taken up far too much of your time. Spend a very, very rare night off. Just for all our Notts County flock, Magpie Circle flock, roughly, how many games do you do a season?
Oh, not as many as you. I was talking to you the other day, and you said you were going to do 4 in a day at Qatar, and I was thinking,
World Cup. I've got tickets for 26 World Cup games in Qatar at the minute.
There you go. I will cover England. So if they do 5, I'll be delighted. If there'll be 6, I'll be a one-man Mexican wave. If they do 7,
on any given season, because you're out 3-4 games a week, aren't you?
Yeah. I need to get life. Look, I'm incredibly lucky just to go to games. I don't know, 130, 140 games a season.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, well, that's why there's so much. But if it's not a proper job, and I admire fans that, I can get in my car and drive, but fans who then have to make that journey, who have the chaos with the, with the trains at the moment, particularly with the train strikes, who crossing all over the country, who are paying for their tickets, okay, petrol's a little bit expensive at the moment, but I'm very lucky to do what I do. And if I see a hitchhiker, if I see a fan coming out of the ground and I say, do you want to lift back down south or the Midlands or whatever, which I did yesterday coming out of Liverpool, I gave a guy a lift back to the Midlands. And you just hear, well, you do it. You travel all over. At least mine, I get paid to do mine. Whereas, England fans are amazing. What they do, what they put at risk, mortgages, marriages, jobs, just because they want to go and follow him. I have to say, I was talking to one guy at Manchester United last week, Ammonia, and I was saying, he was an England fan, Manchester United fan. I said, are you going to go to Qatar? He said, yeah. And the divorce is in the post. And I said, you're joking? He said, no. And he was genuine. And he just said, England, I just love England. And maybe there's that buzz around England that I'm not necessarily convinced Southgate will do it, but England got so many good players. There is a buzz. So someone like him, I obviously won't name him, he genuinely feels that England can go and do something. So again, coming back to, it's all about dreams, this game. And, but, he sacrificed his marriage for
it. National League predictions. I appreciate you've seen even you very little National League football. I mean, do you look beyond the bigger clubs, Wrexham, ourselves, Chesterfield this year? Because I think you went up to Barrow, didn't you, a couple of years ago when they played Aston Villa in a League Cup? Teams like Barrow and Sutton, Harrogate, have all kind of eclipsed the bigger clubs in recent years in getting out of the National League,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I forgot Barrow as well. I tell you what, first, what a journey that was. I thought I thought I was almost there, and then I could almost see New York in the background. Actually, it was quite far west. But what a fantastic atmosphere! I think it was a Villa game, and it was it was an absolute buzzing atmosphere. And you know what? When you go to games like that, you see one or two players like Chuck Moreko, who's now at Chelsea, and you saw him and the development. And again, coming back to this pathway. So look, coming back to your point, I just think Notts need to start their journey back up.
We all think that. And as you've said, who gives a damn about losing to Colville if we go up at the end of the season?
You've got a good manager, you've got a good forward, you've got the hunger is there, the support is there, the fans, from what you've said, from what I can see, seem patient. Whether they'll get nervy, I don't know, but you know what? Why not?
Henry, thank you so much indeed for your time. I will see you at an England game in the not too distant. I will let you get off now. I've just got to read a ton of these messages on my screen, because if not, my regulars will be complaining. So it's going to take me about 15 minutes just to read these out. So I will let you get away. Feel free to log out. Look forward to seeing you on England duty in the not too distant future, and out in Qatar, if not before. Henry, on behalf of all of us on the Magpie Circle podcast, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Good to see you, and hope you go up.
Take care, Henry. Okay, that's Henry Winter from The Times. And now, right, so we were asking how big a deal is it for Notts to go out of the trophy? Luke Beardsley, evening all. Typical Notts, really. We're used to banana skin results, but let's hope we learn from this. Chris Gosling, as long as we put it right Friday with a good performance and strong result, then I'm happy to let Saturday go. Our rivals will be hoping that this setback will carry into the league. Jurgen Halligan is with us. Up. Luke Beardsley, FA Cup exit is a big deal in terms of getting an exciting draw, but promotion should be 100% the priority. Colin Scott, that's Kedwin's dad. FA Cup is a brilliant, exciting competition. Exiting so early is a major disappointment. Imagine a draw away to Newcastle. I'm sure you would have been, Colin. Jurgen says, team on paper was strong enough, but Colville more up for it. Luke Beardsley, teams dream of playing at grounds like Meadow Lane, so we'll always want it. Just think we were disjointed and lacked the intensity of Colville. Hello to everyone from Karen Knight. Chris Gosling, Wrexham have to replay Tuesday, then travel to Boreham Wood Saturday, because we have the second smallest squad in the league. Is that right? Maybe a few rest weeks will serve us well. Enfol, good to have Henry on. Indeed it was. What else have we got? Lee Atkins, I'm so pleased we're out the FA Cup. A distraction we don't want nor need. Chris Gosling sounds like our PR team trying to ensure a couple of zeros get added to Macca's valuation. That was Henry talking about how he was invited by Nick Richardson and the club's PR team to have a chat, which Henry duly did. MFOL, I'm not too fussed about Saturday. One less game to worry about. Just a bit embarrassing, and we can't let it affect our form. To Chris Gosling, I like Luke Williams's 20 million valuation. Aaron Porter, I'm kind of secretly pleased we're out of the cup. It's better for our league campaign. Also highlights our lack of defensive and attacking depth. Worried about key player injuries now, though. Remy Sky, Remy from New York. Good evening, afternoon in New York, isn't it? Hello, friends. Had a terrible nightmare the other day. As I recalled in horror, Notts lost to a schoolboy side in an FA Cup battle. Then I saw the Nottingham Post website and realised it wasn't a dream. To Lee Atkins, Remy, it's something most Notts fans don't really care. The league and getting out of it is what we want, stroke need. What else have we got here? Remy replies, right now here in New York, the Yankees are in the playoffs for baseball. My late father used to get so annoyed when the Yankees broadcast began because they claimed to have won more championships than anyone else. In the world, and my dad would always say how Real Madrid had won more football championships or soccer championships. One day, perhaps, Notts will trump them both. Nothing like positive thinking, Remy. What else have we got? Alex Jackson. The pyramid and playoff system ensure that most clubs are playing for something until the final weeks of a season. Hope is something that drives all sports fans and keeps us turning up to level 5 games. Very good point, Alex. Says Ian Birchnell, it's the hope that kills you, as we've seen in the last three playoff campaigns. Alex says it definitely doesn't make it easier as a fan. We don't like easy though. Chris Gosling, I don't think Paul is reading out comments. I am, so no need for the dodgy emojis. What else have we got? Remy Sky, Tom Haitley, Tony Haitley's a third generation. Tom Haitley is, a third generation player whose granddad played for Notts. A fact I learned from my book. Anyone think be good enough for Notts will play at National League level? Ian Birchin, I love the thought of Warnock's garden gnomes in a 4-4-2, picking up on one of Henry's observations about when he spoke with our former Notts County managers. As we said earlier, Chris Gosling rubbing it in. Colville have got Charlton away. James Ford, gutted to be out of the cup. However, realistically, unlikely to get a good draw, i.e. Derby, Mansfield, Forest Green. We've got Charlton away. It's not bad, is it? Less of a gap from step 5 to 7 than Prem losing to League 2. So forget all about it after win on Friday. Thanks to Henry, says Ian Birchinall. It's interesting. There are quite a lot of us not too displeased or not kind of over-egging the defeat on Saturday. Given my 59 years, I think I'd probably have to say that's probably in terms of result, one of the worst 10 results I can think of the club has ever suffered. When you factor in the pyramid, the level of opposition, or the league in which Colville would be competing. So I don't think we should brush it under the carpet. For me, when you've not played well and you've clawed it back twice, and then going into the final, 20, 25 minutes of the game, when you are the professional full-time team, bringing on some of your most established players, and for then the part-time team that train twice a week to still beat you in the closing stages is, I actually think, pretty damning. And I'm not taking anything away from Colville, far from it. I thought they played extremely well, and I think they deserved to go through in the end based on our performance. So I think they did brilliantly well. I don't think there's any way we should have lost that game even with the players that we put out. Um, that said, if we go on a run and get some results, clearly people will say no big deal. I would have thought going out on Saturday, assuming we'd then got Charlton, prize money, share of gate, I would have estimated that somewhere between £50,000 and £75,000 that the club has lost. And we all talk about how money we're going to get for this player and that player and all the rest of it. That's a big chunk. That's a big chunk. So I think I don't think we should sweep this under the carpet. I think it was a very damning, a very very damning result. But as Henry said, me too. The objective this season is to get back into the Football League. Not a lot, if anything, matters. So let's see how we get on. Ian Bircham says, I love the FA Cup, Paul, and not happy with being out. Other than the year we couldn't play due to COVID, this is the first time we not been in the first round proper. Ian adds, how we bounce back Friday is now key. I agree. Derek Flowers makes the point, and I know there's been some debate about this, apportioning a level of blame to the head coach. He says that Luke messed up big time on Saturday. Chris Gosling, it's what happens next that will determine how bad Saturday's result was. I mean, I think Saturday's result was bad, full stop. Yeah? It's how we view the result, or how we will view the result will be based on Friday night's result and the next one or two results. We haven't picked up injuries to Macaulay or other people, so we've got through that without any injuries. Personally, I feel for our younger fans as well. If you are 12, 13, 14 or 15 years old, then probably going to Charlton will be one of the biggest games you have been to as a Notts County fan, if not the biggest. So, I think that's disappointing. As Mfol says, players out there should have been good enough. Don't really blame Luke Williams. And I think I would probably subscribe to that view as well. The quality of the players that we had on the pitch on Saturday should absolutely have won that game if they had played to the best of their ability. The reality is Colville played to the best of their ability. We didn't. Kane Porter, to be honest, with a cup we're never going to win. I'm not fussed. We're out. Much rather focus on the league. Well, absolutely, we can now focus on the league. It's Maidstone on Friday night. I think that probably does it for tonight. Thank you for all your interactions, as always. Thank you to Henry, who not doing a game tonight. One of the rare nights when he's not attending 150 matches a season. So thank you to Henry for taking time out. We will be back next week post Maidstone to do it. Ian Bircham asked Paul, do you think we now need another striker? It's difficult. Personally, that wouldn't be the main position I would be looking at strengthening. I think we've said before when we've had Mark Stallard on. I personally, how I like clean sheets. I would be looking at centre halves. At the moment, it would appear that Aidan isn't imminently coming back. So I think that makes it a bit weak. I think that it's difficult to get a really proven striker in because are you realistically ever going to play them ahead of Macaulay or Kedwin? I would suggest not. So if you're going for a name who you think can get you a lot of goals, he's going to be on the bench. And I'm not sure. I think Langstaff and Scott are probably the best striking partnership in the division. And I appreciate it's a close run thing with what Wrexham have, but I think if you give me the choice of Notts' front two or Wrexham's front two, I would go with Notts' front two every time. We shall see. It will be a subject of debate. I hope that we don't need to rush out and get one. But of course, if one of those players was injured, the loan market being what it is in the National League market, you can go out and do something immediately anyway. Enfol says, not yet for me, Ian, another striker, James Ford. Would we have still been the same ball number? We probably wouldn't have got Charlton. So I don't think it's right to say that's what we're missing out on. Gutted to be out, still, says James. I think the FA Cup, you stay, I think this is an Anorak stat coming up, James. I think that what happens is it's the number of the tie. So it's not redrawn every round alphabetically in difference of teams. So C for Colville, N for Notts. It's the tie number that you get and you stick through it. So yes, I think we would have got Charlton away. Stand to be corrected, but I think that's what it is. Chris Gosling, for once, me and Chris agree. I agree. We need another centre back. I think. Look, if we can get Aiden back fit and Aiden can play a consecutive run of games, then I think you then put the centre half category in the same bracket as Macaulay and Kedwin. But I think Aiden has missed quite a few games this season. I think Connell's done very well, but I look at the options, the three. I'm not sure we have a massive amount of depth. Not sure we have a massive amount of depth there. That's my thoughts. Caney and Birchinall says, I hope Macca and Kedwin don't get injured, but wouldn't like to be without one of them. Okay, I think we debated plenty of things tonight. We've done, how many minutes have we done? 71 minutes. So thank you very much indeed, as always. Thank you for your participation. Thank you to Henry Winter and Chris Gosling. Before I sign off, can we sign a decent corner taker? I mean, I have to say, and Martin Allen was a dream at this. Brilliant. One of the, apart from Alan Sheehan being a very, very good player and a very, very good left back or central defender, one of the reasons that Alan was bought was because of his ability to be a brilliant set piece deliverer with that left foot of his. That left foot one whipped the ball in. There is an argument that if you've got a kind of a real top end deliverer of a ball, that can be worth a few goals this season. That can be worth a few goals any season. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you very much indeed. Look forward to catching up with all of you next week when hopefully we are still top of the National League and we've got 3 points from Friday night's game against Maidstone. Take care for now, everyone. Bye-bye.